You've just missed one critical thing in that project that you worked on. I don't belong anymore here and I should basically commit suicide. You're really gonna eventually damage your credibility. And then I heard him saying, damn, I'm stupid. You should treat failure like an event. Marhaban, how's it going everyone? And welcome back to Yuwab, your place to get better at work and life. I'm your host, Saeed Al-Ghafri. Thank you for being with me. And if you're here, thank whoever shared this episode with you. And remember this ask. Keep sharing this episode if you find it useful, and I'm sure you will. Today, I want to talk to you about a lie that too many of us believe. And that is when you describe yourself as a failure. When you call yourself, I am a failure. And you know, when you say it, you continue by saying, oh, I am an idiot. And then you'll be like, you know what? I don't belong to this world. But here's the truth. You are really not a failure. You know, you've just missed one critical thing in that project that you worked on, or that specific thing that you have done. You know, unless you have been unlucky in your life, honestly, I mean, you've done so many things and it didn't really work, and I don't believe it's true, but you're really not a failure. And what happens when you basically describe yourself like that? The after effect is so hard. It's actually not really healthy for you. And then you're going to start beating yourself. You know, you don't really want that, haram alayk. And then you're going to be like, I'm no one, I don't belong anymore here, and I should basically commit suicide. God forbid, you shouldn't do that. Now, just imagine what will happen for the other people as well. You know, that's not really good. You're really going to eventually damage your credibility. You're not going to have a purpose anymore. And that will immediately, I mean, honestly, without even thinking, will impact your mental health. And when that happens, when you're stressed, the first thing is your physical condition, your body. And if your body is not really strong and you're not immune well, what will happen? That's really not good. And then when that happens, you know, your relationships will be affected with your coworkers, family, friend. You don't want that, because the impact after that is just not that pleasant. So stop calling yourself you're a failure, man. I get it. Honestly, it's so difficult not to do well in a specific project. It's not really easy. You know, but life is all about succeeding and failing. Keep that in mind. And once you find out why you haven't succeeded, everything really changed, because you're going to do it much more better next time. I've been there myself. And again, I'm not trying to undermine the impact of failure. I'm not really trying to do that. And I'm not trying to encourage you not to basically do it. But you'll have to basically move on quickly when it comes to basically being there. So let's break it down. Failure is not really final. You know, it's not judgment day where it's really final and then we either go to hell or we go to heaven. Ya akhi, even on judgment day, chances you may be forgiven. So there are even chances there. So the reality is, don't treat failure as you failed all your life. Treat it as a feedback. You know, most of the time, the problem isn't you. It's just that missing part in a project or in that approach or system or perspective. Trust me, because you've worked so much hard on that specific project. Probably you haven't nailed it. You missed something. Once you know that, then it's going to be really great, because at the end of the day, that's how life goes. Let's imagine now you're a CEO of a company, and then you call yourself a failure. You walk into the office, you know, everyone is basically going to their work, and you are having that feeling you are a failure. What do you think will happen to the company that day? The two things that could happen. You may go to your room, lock the door, and then just be with yourself. And no one will even notice. And life goes on. And you don't want that. You want to be there. You want to thrive. You want to basically empower people. You want to inspire people. You want to basically get the best and create value when it comes to that. And you don't want people to picture you as a person who was really a failure, because that will have a consequent effect on your employees. So it's really not good. It's not a good state. Now imagine you're a parent and you say, oh, I'm a failure. I'm unworthy of the situation I am in. And you have kids, you have children, you have a partner. What do you think will happen when they need you the most and you feel like you're a failure? That's really not good. That's really, really not good when it comes to that. So the consequences are really not that great. Let me give you two stories of things that I've seen, and they're very surprising. The first one is, this is a guy that I've had the pleasure to work with. And honestly, one day we were sitting in a meeting and he was presenting. He did a great job, actually. I mean, he was doing a good job, a great job. And something in the presentation was not right. And I could notice how his complete body language changed. And then I heard him saying, damn, I'm stupid. He even cursed. I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself, man? Why are you calling yourself stupid? The guy is so really, really intelligent, very sharp, technically sound, really technically sound. Everything he has done up to that point is remarkable. What he did, he just missed out one simple thing when someone asked him a question in the meeting and it was not part of the presentation. So what, yani? Shu yani? So what? He called himself stupid because of that. He could have just said, if he doesn't know the answer, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. I'll just come back to you. And I'm sure the other person will give him the benefit of doubt because he's a high performer. He could have just corrected that and then send it again and say, hey, listen, guys, I'm sorry. This is the answer. That's it. What happened after the meeting? He was like, oh, why did I do it? Why that happened? I shouldn't do it again. And he started blaming people and blaming others. Why would you do that, man? Come on. It's not the end of the world. The second story is, this is a guy who came to me to be coached. And he's abroad. He's not in the UAE. And when we started, he basically came and said, listen, I want to do things different in my life. I want to grow my business. I want to have a better career in life and all that. I'm like, okay, great. Let's do it, man. And then we basically went deep and deep and deep into the subject. And I came to know that this guy used to call himself worthless and a failure. Now, because of that, you know what he did? He had to go through therapy. Really, he went through therapy. He was seeing a therapist. And then it took him, I think he told me 3 or 4 months to recover. Why would you do that, man? And then honestly, I told him, what was the problem? I mean, I had to basically dig deep a little bit and say, what was the problem? He said, there was a project. And within the project, he had a team. And the team did not do well. And honestly, they did something unpleasant, which really hurted him. I mean, I could understand that, okay, it happened. People were not loyal to him. But again, it reached the point that he went for therapy because he was calling himself a failure and unworthy. And when I told him in the meeting, and I'm going to go through the stuff later with you on how to anchor yourself when you have such a feeling, the guy did amazing. He did one achievement that I have not, honestly, I have not heard anyone achieve it. Seriously. It's just amazing. And after the sessions with him, when I had my coaching sessions with him, Then things got better for him and he's doing very well now. Not because of me, because of him ultimately. And I was guiding him and supporting him in his journey. But again, you see how that feeling of being a failure between these two stories. One was not very excessive. This one is really excessive. It affected him very bad. But thank God, he's in a good place now. Now, 3 things people usually miss out, when they feel like they're a failure. The first thing is they confuse progress with perfection. And this is very important. When you link success or you are succeeding to destinations, and you have to always win to be successful, then you're going to call yourself a failure, my friend. That's basically a guaranteed, and that's a recipe that you need to keep in mind. When you grow, you need to have in mind that there are a lot of ups and downs. You're going to go through it. And you really get better. And don't really link success to basically reaching an end goal, because ultimately that doesn't work. Within the journey, there's going to be up and down. You're going to fail. You're going to success. Ultimately, you're going to reach your destination. Now, something that I basically keep in mind is, and this is a tip for you when it comes to that, always be in the moment. Focus on the journey, on the now. I'm here now doing this podcast. You're there listening to me. After that, you're going to go and be with your family. Focus on that. When you go back to work tomorrow, you're going to basically do a lot of stuff. I'm not asking you to not have in mind the end goal. Always have an eye on the destination or the final destination. Keep an eye on that because it's very important. But don't lose yourself in the moment, and don't beat yourself on how far you have achieved so far. I see a lot of people, they measure success with progress. That's sometimes not right, because sometimes you're going to be ahead of progress, sometimes you're going to be way below progress. So it depends on how it goes. And something that I like to do is always have some buffer. Mistakes happens, failures happens, things go wrong. And it's really inevitable. Have that buffer. The second thing is you really exaggerate small setbacks with being a complete failure. And that's really not nice. Yes, you failed, but you're not a failure. You see the difference? You failed, but you're not a failure. That's very important. So take it easy and don't label yourself to be a failure. What I notice is that people love labeling themselves. Anything they put a label to. Lovely, I failed, I succeed, it tastes nice, it's delicious, probably because I'm hungry now. Labeling should not really be the case, especially when it comes to these tough, challenging moments like failure. So do not intensify that process, because you are already under a lot of pressure and stress from life. I like to do this step. What I like to do is I always have a list of all the achievements I've done in the past. And I have it in my iPad because I always look at it. It inspires me that I've done a lot in life. And the failures I've done maybe are 2 or 3, so it's fine. I mean, I've failed a couple times because I've done so many things which are really great. Look at it, see it, and then failure should be something, you should treat failure like an event and you just got over it. Okay? Because, sometimes what happens is that when you intensify it and don't make it in small steps or steady or daily things, you make it a big thing, then that doesn't work. And that comes again with the progress and all that. So make it small when it comes to that. The third thing, this is like everyone's problem. It's ego. Let's demonstrate that. Let's say you're in a meeting and someone in the meeting, okay, it's like, I'm back to the example I gave you. Someone in the meeting says, oh, that's a mistake you've done. What do you think will happen when you have a large ego or a big ego? You're just going to take it too much on yourself that you made that large mistake. But it's not, it's just a small mistake. Or you may be shouting at that other person. But again, reality is high performers or people who are high achievers, they really label small mistakes as a failure. So don't do that. Or maybe your son comes to you and you're a father or a mother, and maybe they say, hey, dad or mom, you made a mistake. And then you say, how could this guy who's younger says that I made a mistake? Oh, I failed, or I failed him. You see what I'm saying? Or this is something that I see a lot of people doing when you compare yourself or success with someone else. Okay? Let's say you are basically having a small shop and it's successful, it's doing very well. And you compare it with a large chain of similar activity shops. You can't do that. You cannot really do that. You cannot compare yourself, because then you're going to label yourself as a failure. Yes, you should be motivated to be like them, but not to the point that you're a failure. I know this person who was in the corporate world. I worked with him. And every time we speak to him, he's like, oh, in my old company. Oh, in my old company. Oh, in my old company. And one time, actually, I told him, okay, what did you do in your old company? And he went and he did it and it failed. Honestly, reality is, don't compare with anything else, because that company or that person or anyone else have a completely different situation than you or environment. So these are 3 things that I think you should keep always if you have that feeling that you're a failure. So let me ask you, what is one missing piece that you're gonna work on right now? Are you gonna focus on progress or perfection? Or should you not exaggerate next time something happens? Or maybe ease on that ego? And I don't want you to call yourself a failure. All right? Call yourself a room for improvement. That's even much more better. And really treat failure as a feedback. You know, every no, every setback is really pointing you closer to the destination or to what you want to do in life. And think about it. The people who we admire in life, most of them, entrepreneurs, leaders, athletes, all of them failed. They're not failures. They failed multiple times even. Look at where they are today. Why? Because they have a much more better mindset. That life is not all about succeeding. It's about succeeding and failing and then succeeding after failing. And that's the most important thing. You know what separates us from these people who have been successful in life is because they failed. Trust me when I come to that. And this is much more important when we think that we are a failure. The most important thing is we go, we do it, we find the missing piece, we learn, and then we keep really going. You know, something very important is failure is not really an identity. It's basically a single event. And it's not really something that you should treat it very much in a large-scale problem. For me, it's a signal, and it's very much a teacher that you are basically not in the right way, and probably you should do this thing better. And that's the most important thing when it comes to that. So here is my reminder for you today. You are not a failure. You are just one step away, or maybe few steps away from that missing piece or hitting your target. All right? I ask you that you share this episode with someone who really labeled themselves as a failure right now. You know, who knows what could happen? Because at Yuwab, we do believe that failure is not really the end. It's the doorway for you to grow. Okay? Until next time, keep moving and keep growing. مع السلامة.